Good morning. It is 9 a.m. and I'll call to order the Board of Directors special meeting workshop for Tuesday, February 4th, 2025. May I have a roll call, please?
Director Meyerhoffen,
Here.
Director Duff,
Present.
Director Martin,
Here.
Vice President Griffith,
Present.
President Sewell.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Seeing that all directors are present, we'll skip item 3 and move on to item 4, public input. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the board on matters within the board's jurisdiction. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. State law prohibits the board from discussing or taking action on any item not listed on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public wishing to address the board?
President Sewell, we do not.
Thank you. And with that, we are actually going to move into our closed session. Counselor, would you report the items?
Sure. The board will meet in closed session under item 5, which is conference with legal counsel regarding potential initiation of litigation, and that relates to one potential case. And item 6, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, also relating to one potential case.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll head into closed session. We're back from closed session. Counselor, would you report out? Did John leave? We're back from closed session and there was no reportable action taken. Moving on to items for discussion. Item 8, water theft. General Manager?
Thank you, President Sewell, members of the board. Our Assistant General Manager, Marion Champion, will take this item. Marion, you have a PowerPoint presentation?
I do. Will, would you mind pulling that up? So I reported last month during our meeting, during the public affairs update, about some of the Aqua-sponsored legislation that is moving forward with fire hydrant tampering. A couple months ago, we also had a discussion about what our process and what our policy is. So I wanted to bring this back to you just to give you guys the general information and then open it up for discussion or questions. Well, next slide, please. So our ordinance, we have an ordinance 97-6.
Ms. Champion, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we don't see any slides.
Okay, we'll reshare it. You can just end it and then reshare.
Did we report out that there was no reportable action in closed session? There was some delay in getting back into the main room.
Yes, we did. Thank you, John.
How's
Can you
that,
see that
Lori?
going?
Sorry.
I just see a blue screen that says that you've started screen sharing, but I don't see what you're sharing. There we go.
Great. Okay, again, ordinance 97-6 lays out our charges. The first offense is $300. The second offense is $450. It's important to note that we typically also provide a warning before we would charge these fees. But this is if anytime we find someone using unauthorized water use, this is what is in our ordinance that we are allowed to charge. Again, as we discussed before, a lot of times it never gets to this, and we don't really charge very often. Next slide. I also wanted to note that we also have this in our code and our codification under Title 5, Section 5.02.130. And there's also 2 letters here. You can see the first offense, the language is pretty general. By the second offense, we start to ratchet up the language, reminding them that it's a punishable misdemeanor. Next slide. Also, I wanted to provide you a bit of a comparison between our district and what some of the other neighboring districts charge for unauthorized water use. You can see where ours is on the low end, the 300 to 450. And then you can see where Desert Water Agency, Coachella Valley Water District are up over $1,000. High Desert, they actually do it a little bit differently. They average it out. And then Indio Water Authority is very similar to ours. I think Brian mentioned it, that they probably had similar attorneys that were putting it together when they did it. Beaumont Cherry Valley, they're very steep with their pricing. And then Rancho, California is also pretty steep. But that gives you a comparison to see where we're at. Again, we've got it in our resolution and our code, so we're allowed to charge that. Go ahead, next slide, Will. And as I mentioned, Aqua is working to up these amounts and make it allowable to do more, but there was not the political will or power to really look at moving this down for just tampering. Generally, if a customer is looking for water, a right to water, as the right to water in California is very strong. If somebody just needs water, a homeless person per se, tampering, that was not something that the Aqua legislation really wanted to take on. So instead, the changes that Aqua is promoting right now is all focused on water haulers and fire hydrant tampering. And so that you can see they're talking about making it a first offense $2,500, second offense up to $5,000, and then third offense would be $10,000. And that's for each, not calendar year. So that's a change from the previous legislation. They have, since I last talked to you, they have added a sponsor. Assemblymember Jackie Irwin has introduced it, and Las Virgenes is one of the co-sponsors. They've put together some language that basically states anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 in revenues that they see annually lost because of water theft. But they have a little different problem. They have, very wealthy people who are literally paying water haulers to go to fire hydrants, take water, and then bring it back to their private property. So they're in a little bit different boat than us. We're looking at some of the unintended consequences, the the safety of our water system. Those are probably what information we put together. If we're going to be supporting this bill, that's where our damages are, is mainly the safety of our water system. And with that, I wanted to open up for board discussion.
Feel free if you have comments.
Can I ask a question? What are the limits of the fines currently, or are there none?
Our limits are based on what's in our resolution, so we have
But
to.
that's what we said, that can be changed, but are there limits from the state law
I believe there is
currently?
and
They're wanting to increase them, but what are they?
I'd have to look that up. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Mhm.
The only reason I say that, and maybe JP can help answer this, what is the minimum amount that causes the police to have to put the fine amount on the record? Like, what causes it to be a listed misdemeanor or what have you, so that it can add into, like, when someone gets arrested, let's say someone gets arrested for multiple things, and one of them happens to be that they broke the fire hydrant and were getting, stealing water, amongst other things. There's a lot of, fines associated with the damages that they did. What would be the fine necessary to make sure that we end up getting whatever county funds are retrieved from that criminal's court proceedings? Does that make sense?
I might be able to shed a little light on that. Before I got elected, there was a fire hydrant out in front of my house, and the homeless would come by with a 5-gallon jug or whatever and get water. But one day, this guy shows up with a trailer and a truck with a great big, 250-gallon totes in there. So I called the police department and I said, hey, this guy's just taking advantage. They came out, they cited him. I don't know if it was an arrest or a release or what the details were, but they never came back again. And I know that the police did take care of that. Now, what the fine was there in the court form or whatever, I'm not sure how the court takes care of that, but maybe we can look at it. On the issue of how much we are fining people, when I reported the one contractor that was hooked up to the landscapers hooked up to the valve, I forgot what the TCD is.
Double check detector.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It was a double check detector assembly off of Tennyson.
So when they were hooked up to that, did they actually use more than $350 worth of water that day? I don't think so. So I think our fines are fine. It gets the message across. We don't need to take people to the cleaner and put them in a financial situation. They need to call the police, ask them to press charges against them for stealing the water. That in itself is bad enough. And then we can fine them our $350 on the first one. So I think our fines are okay. I think we're on the right track with this whole thing. And I think that we all have a responsibility when we're going through town to make sure nobody's stealing the water. And if we see something, to say something. Another case, I called Mr. Macy and General Manager Macy up. Was it on a Saturday, I believe it was, or something?
I believe so,
It was
yes.
on a Saturday. I saw somebody out there with a blue MSD shirt on and the fire hydrant and the water going across the street, about halfway into the street, and I didn't see the truck. So I called General Manager Macy up, told me it was okay to get out and talk to the employee, and the truck was parked in the, a little bit in the alleyway where I couldn't see it, but there's those cases too. I kind of felt a little bit bad about it, but yeah, he was taking the samples, had the two little glass bottles there, taking the samples. I understand why. I don't know if we ever put it on social media why the fire hydrant is being released like that before the sample is taken, but there is a reason for it. I know Danny knows. So maybe we could explain that a little bit in case somebody else does see that. So we're all responsible to keep an eye on our water. Like I say, I think what Assistant General Manager Champion has put together here is more than adequate, and it's, I think, a very good start.
Director Duff, did your question?
No, it didn't actually. So if we could just get some research done on one, what our legal limits are according to the water code and state law. And two, if we can find out what fine levels elevate so that we know how we do our first, second, and third to make sure that it actually causes teeth to sink in versus a fine that wouldn't even get collected by the courts.
Has there ever really been that you can remember a second fine or a third fine with anybody, or does it usually just stop right at the first fine?
I remember several instances. I can't quote exactly the location of the property where we've charged. In my time with the district, I have seen several people be arrested and taken away for water theft.
Good.
What we're addressing today, I believe, is the idea that contractors and homeless are the only ones that are stealing water. Unfortunately, when we have customers that have to be shut off, they get creative and they turn their water on illegally. They cut our the locking loops, as we refer to, on our valves that turn the water on and off. They cut, there's a number of things that they do that cause damage. We record that, put that on their bill as a cost to be paid, and we have to deal with unfortunate situations like that. The easier part with that is we know who's doing it. Many times, some of the instances that we're talking about, we see that something's missing, we see that something's damaged, there's evidence that there's water on the ground, and then we watch it. In some cases we can find it, who's doing it, but unfortunately with today's society, there's not a home to associate with, or where we can actually say, hey, this is. And we do have difficulty with the police or the sheriff reporting and waiting. And there's been cases where staff has stood by an hour and a half waiting. I was like, guys, we can't wait any longer. We need to move forward. So this is something that's going to take some thought on how we actually work through it. But even eliminating the first step, for example, and going straight to the fine, it may be we need to do an nexus to determine whether that cost even covers what it was intended to cover, or whether we look at how high we can actually go and whether that's a deterrence. But
And it's not even for me how high we go. It's making sure that whatever the level is, it's what the court system will trigger so that it adds on to the I can't think of the word right now, but when you get in trouble and the court creates your fines and your how many days of community service, if our money is in there, then he'll have to pay that back or she'll have to pay that back. But if it's amount below what the court will take, then it does nothing. And we'll just be trying to collect it from someone who doesn't even have an account. And I just want to make one comment and then I'm done on this subject. Thank you guys for bringing this. And that's that all of our public, just like Director Meyerhoffen was saying, if you see something, say something. Please know that if you see water theft happening, we have to pay for that cost somewhere. So basically, we are all paying for water theft. every single one of us in this city pay for water theft. So if you want to see that not happening, please report it if you see something. Thank you.
Is the staff okay with what's going on here and the recommendations, or is there still some things that the staff wants to work out with what you're recommending here today? Where's the staff at with this?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what your question exactly is, but as far as I've heard what you guys have said about social media, and I think that you make a good point. The see something, say something. I think we can do a better job of getting that message out and maybe doing a mini campaign to the community that, reminding them that theft is theft. If you see somebody out there tampering with a meter, that's expense to the district, but it's also putting the safety of our water system at jeopardy. So I think a see something, say something campaign would be very, very helpful. And we can definitely look at the amounts to see what those triggers are, because I know Danny's staff would really like it if they actually police actually respond when we call them.
Also, I just want to make a comment that I'm being overly simplistic with my statement here, but I think it's important for us to keep up with inflation, and I'll find that was originally $1,000 may not have the impact or the penalty that it should have based on today's expenses in terms of water rate increases and the like. We got to keep up with inflation.
So would the board want the staff to come back with the maximum amount, perhaps a change, raising the fine levels, after looking at what the maximum amount is that we can fine?
We have it. And it says proposed fines for water haul unauthorized fire.
That's,
That's a water truck.
well, that's a proposed bill that Ogden's working on.
How are we going to collect these fines? How much money is it going to cost us to collect the fine? The court system has the same problem. And then if it goes to a warrant, then it does nothing but create more problems more burdens on the taxpayers. So how are we going to collect these fines once we issue the fine? Anybody have any ideas on that?
I do, if I have a minute to talk. To answer that question, if you have homeowners that are doing this, then they don't pay it. It's just like anything else. It can go on the tax rolls. That's the easiest way.
Easy.
I think you have three separate issues here. I think you have things like the water hauler, those kind of things is one situation. You have the homeowners who tamper with the meter, and then you have the homeless. They're three separate things, so you can't have a one size fits all. I know that there is a right to water in California. However, from my perspective, your right to water does not give you the right to steal. I think given what just happened in the Palisades and Altadena and all that, people need to realize that when people tamper with the water lines, that affects firefighters' ability to do their job. Everybody complains about the reservoir that was empty. But the real big thing is anybody that really knows is it was the volume of water going out. So if we have a volume of water that is already exiting, it already reduces our ability to respond to fires. That puts everybody at risk. So it's not just about my neighbors tampering because they want some water, and I don't care, because that's your issue because you have to deal with the water. The reality is they're tampering, put your home at risk. Because their tampering might mean that your house burns down, and then you're going to be pissed off stating, well, it's the water company because there's no water. No, it's because you have all these people that are stealing and reducing our ability to run the operation. So I think we have three things. I think we have the illegal theft from contractors, which is one. Then you have the homeowner issue as well as damage to equipment. And then you have the homeless. And I think we have to look at all three from kind of a different perspective. And if you have theft and you can't catch the person or they don't have a home, how is that handled? If they have a home, you just throw it on their bill. But I think we should raise the fines, and I don't think there should be a warning. We should do a campaign that theft is theft and it puts everybody at risk, and that's the warning. And from that point on, you don't get a warning when you shoplift. You know, it's not like I can go in there and steal a bunch of stuff and they say, well, it's your first time. Okay, you just leave the stuff and you go. No, they haul you away. So I don't think that we should have a warning.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
I just noticed the guy just running straight out the door with a handful of clothes out of Kmart. And around the corner they go.
If they
Um,
can.
You know what, I don't agree with raising the fines. I mean, I know that we're in a community where we have medium household income here at $37,000. If somebody's stealing water, it's probably because they can't afford it to begin with.
So I have to pay for it is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, that's bullshit. So
Can I ask,
You're right again. Yes.
is it possible to have different fines depending on, because like I'd say the hardest fine should be on the contractors or these businesses that are trying to profit off of property that's not theirs. I do like John Pinkney mentioned, if we know that what the max could be, that can give us more data for us to make a decision on should the fines stay, should they not. I've not been a big fan. We've seen it with multiple things, of waiting 28 years to change a rate. Eventually that rate is going to have to change. And I'd rather it be done in incremental changes than let's wait 50 years and then triple it. Or so I think if we have more data, we can make a more informed decision. I do like the idea of different fines for different violators. And do we have anything else on that item? I feel like we're beating a dead
I
horse.
agree with you. We should, a fine for a contractor should be a little bit tougher than a fine for a homeowner.
And JP, in addition to finding out what the maximums by law are, can we also find out what the court requires as far as misdemeanors to be recorded as the fines that the court collects from the person prosecuted?
Can you restate that one more time, Amber?
I cannot think of the word that.
Like, are we talking about restitution?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Can we find out the limits for restitution, please?
Okay.
I could not come up with that word. Thank you, JP.
And
Well, if somebody, stole water to the point that it was I guess the first question is, what is the threshold before it can be treated as a crime and they can be prosecuted? And the DA, and it may be a meeting with the DA to start prosecuting, water theft criminally. And then as part of the punishment or the sentence that's handed down upon a conviction, typically the courts will order restitution to the victim. And so in this case, it would be the agency, and we'd be looking for a restitution order to be issued by the court to reimburse the district for the value of the water that was stolen. But I understand the question now.
Thank you.
and Danny, you had something to add?
President Sewell, thank you. I don't want to continue to beat this up. I know we talked a lot about it, but I didn't share certain things thinking they may come up. In past, we've got a couple of different things. For example, if it is truly a contractor with a water truck, they're licensed in most cases. I have personally, because of, we're talking about the people that want to continue to be habitual, offenders that are stealing, don't care. I have reported them to the state water, or not state water resource control board, but state license board. Any official complaint actually does suspend their license for 30 days. It's an unfortunate thing that we don't want to have to get into, but when we actually truly have an offender like that, that's what forces our hand. We also work with, and going back to what Director Meyerhoffen said, is what does staff feel? In concept, we agree something needs to be done. We're dealing with something as a society that we've never seen also, that's also pushing us in this issue. In cases where development, for example, I've always encouraged that when we have a conversation with the developer, specifically the superintendent, this is your warning. We've progressed the water system so that you've got fire protection, you've got the ability to do construction, and right there near where you're constructing. And this is your warning. We're not here to police your trades. We don't have the ability, the resources to police your trades. That is your responsibility. All fire hydrant caps are on. They're where you need to use water, you're using a construction meter. So if we come through and we see something removed, and the operating nut chewed up, it's only one reason. and it's to take water. And we've already, so it's not, I'm not here to police anything. And so when we see it, we go right to step one, define. And it may seem unfair, but it's on them. So we can't police the trades and their subs and everything else. So that's something that we've done, but it's something hard to manage. We're starting to get into some of our larger developments again, and for the longest time we've had infill, but a bigger thing that's not really related to water theft is theft. We've got a bigger issue with stolen fire hydrants in our remote areas. So when we start talking about the concern about the safety of our system and what it does and what it, especially with the unfortunate items in Los Angeles, they're getting creative. They know what they're doing. They're not just hooking up a chain and driving off with them. They're taking a valve key that we use in this industry to turn our valves on and off, to isolate the valve, to remove that, just like if they were a worker. So the see something, say something, that campaign also probably has to go further into, even if you suspect that it's us, say something, because that's what's happening right now. It's a vehicle in the middle of the day with a light, hey, I put a safety orange or a green vest on and turn my lights on. I'm out there, it looks like I'm official. It's happening. So that's not exactly what we're here to talk about. But when we start talking about all the things that are impacting us, we've got a bigger cost to the district in replacing stolen equipment and damaged equipment, not necessarily caused by that unfortunate person that's unhoused and needs to have water. So I just want to put that out there as far as where staff is, where we are thinking about, is there is that issue as well.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
I know you'll
Mr.
know
Friend,
the
thank
answer
you.
to this really quickly. Can you tell me how much a hydrant costs us?
Roughly, easiest is between 3,000 and 5,000, 3,000 and 3,500 for the material only.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I look forward to continuing this. I think it's a good discussion, and with more data, I think we can decide on what changes, if any, need to be made. Moving on to item 9. I believe this is Marion again.
Yes, I've got several items for you today. First, I just wanted to go ahead and give you a quick update. We've got several policies that we have been working on in the last month or so, and I wanted to give you an update on some of those, where we were at with them. Go ahead. So this month, I plan to bring you an AI policy and also an objection process for proposed water sewer fees. I plan to bring both of those to you at the study session this month. Next month, I'm also working on several updates to our procurement policy, which includes things like check signing, check request, check writing policy. And so you'll be receiving all of that probably in March. And so we'll bring it to the workshop and then to the study session. So the first two that we're planning to bring this month, we're going to go into a little bit more detail. Go ahead, Will. The first one is the AB 2257. For those of you who are at Aqua, and I think even CSDA also spoke about this a little bit, there's a new policy or a new legislation that was just passed and enacted on January 1st of this year. And it actually ties in with our Prop 218 process, goes in hand with that. And what it does and why we need it is that there have been several rate cases where a governing board like ourselves, we pass a rate increase using the Prop 218 process, but then after the fact, we get sued. And then it may be a year later, it may be a year and a half later, and then there's a lot of costly research and information that has to go into for that process as we try to defend that Prop 218 process. What this new legislation, and this was Aqua led by several of the agents, Aqua led this, they were the ones who championed this whole process. And what this does is that this creates a dispute objection process right there during the Prop 218 process. And this will go hand in hand with the Prop 218 process. Go ahead. And what it will do is there's 6 easy steps. The first step is that we would need to adopt either a resolution or an ordinance. And John has actually looked at the ordinance that Aqua had provided and made some tweaks to it. So I'll be bringing that to you. It's a copy is also in the materials I handed out today. But that is something that we have to pass now so that we have it on the books and have it adopted. And that way, if in the future, whenever we do decide to do any type of rate changes or any special assessments, this language already be in our governing documents. So the first is that we have to adopt that resolution or the ordinance, and we're choosing to do it as an ordinance. And then if and when we do any type of rate changes or rate increases, when we go out with our Prop 218, we would have to include language about how they can do this objection in that Prop 218 language. And then that process now runs parallel at the same time as the Prop 218 language moves forward. There's a notice, and then there's a window for objections. So if people have questions or they object to anything that's in our materials, or they have a question of how we came up with certain terminology and numbers, they can put in an objection right then. Then at the close of that objection period, we collect all of those comments and questions from the public, and staff will prepare a document that line items out, very similar to what you would see in a CEQA process, CEQA documentation. It line items out, and it has a response to each one of those comments. And then at the close of this, we would do a public hearing where we unveil that document. We talk about what are the questions and concerns by the public. We address them there at that public hearing so that it's all very transparent. And in general, this is really just adding more transparency and giving ratepayers an opportunity to have more dialogue with the agency. At the end of it, if the board would then go ahead and adopt, they would do their next meeting, they would be able to adopt the rate or the assessment changes after that public hearing is done. Again, it's a very transparent, very out in the open process. This today, what we're going to be bringing you, the ordinance, just allows us to adopt this and to move forward with this process. A copy of the ordinance is in the materials that I provided you today, so you can take a look at it. We'll also have a copy in the study session materials. I'll go into another presentation, maybe into a little bit more detail, and show you a diagram. If you've been watching any of the Aqua Communications, they've also sent out information and fact sheets on this process. So this is something that several other water agencies are all doing right now at the same time. Questions?
Comment. Item number 2. Third sentence, there's a typo.
Thank you.
On the second page of the ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we're brining judicial.
No, we are not. I don't have any pickles or any brine. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No, I think this is great. One of the last aquas I attended, how you said the 2 different timelines, there's a lot of talk about it. And although it didn't seem too difficult to do, there's a lot of technicalities, and for us to have all our ducks in a row, just protect the district. So thank you.
Next, I want to just briefly outline the AI policy. If you guys remember last year when we adopted our codification, we had a little bit of talk about AI. And at the time, council recommended that we adopt a general statement with our codification that just talks about how we will keep it open so that we can have a policy for staff to follow when it came to AI. At last week's CASA, there was a lot of talk about AI and the use of it within districts like ourselves. And so I think it is really time for us to bring that policy to you. It's important that this policy is something that we can review and update frequently. And that's why it makes sense to leave the codification there where it says we will have a policy. And then this is the actual policy that is a little bit more nimble, and we can make changes quickly as things move. So some of the details, and I did put a copy of this in your packet, and I'll be able to go into more detail during, I can also do more as well next week. But some of the things I wanted to really kind of talk about is that, the policy lays out that we'll have an adherence to all legal framework that is related to AI. We're protecting the district's intellectual property, so staff will be held to an accountability that we're not taking and putting out our information out onto the World Web for others to use. There'll be no sharing of personal or confidential information. I think that's very, very important that staff has that guidance. And also that AI can be used as, predictive to help us with analysis, but really final decisions really require human expertise. And so this really kind of lays that out. We will, when we actually do, after we adopt this policy, then we'll also have a slide deck that will go out to employees that kind of reminds them that in more friendly language, not so much as a policy, but kind of gives them that framework. And I will say that they talked last week about the consortium up in San Jose that created this or created that framework and has really done a lot of research on it. The policy I brought you here today is based on the work that's being done up there. So we're really moving forward. I will say that, I use AI a lot when I'm creating, I'll use ChatGPT when I'm trying to do like a social media post or something. I might throw in something and say, refine this. And I think we're at that point now where we're starting to see it creep in more and more to our daily lives. We need to have some framework and some guidance to employees to make sure that we're staying safe. I know that most of us have good judgment, but this is just a reminder to use that judgment when you're using AI. And with that, I will open it up for discussion.
Questions, comments?
Great work. Thank you for acting so quickly.
Is that all he has to say? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, Assistant General Manager Champion, that you're on the right track here. As we know, you and I've spoke a little bit about AI in the past. And it is complicated. It can get us in trouble. And so I really appreciate you putting this together, and I appreciate you letting us know that this is going to be an ongoing thing and be coming back as AI grows, that we'll be making other decisions on how things are going. So please keep up the good work with the AI.
Thank you. And is that all for the policy changes? Great. We'll move on to affiliations list. And this is Marion again.
Thank you. Last month, there was a request from the board that we bring back the strategic plan and we tie it back in with the affiliations list. And so what I did was I pulled up our strategic plan. There's a copy of the communications goal, SMART goal number 1 in your packet. But really, I wanted to draw your attention to area 1.4, which is where I believe that makes the strongest ties back to the affiliation list. And there are 4 different sections that I believe align with our affiliations list. Section 1.4, those 4 areas are 1.4.2, cultivating positive relationships with federal, state, and local agencies that impact district operations. 1.4.3, cultivate positive relations with key industry professionals to stay informed and gain feedback. 1.4.6, identify and influence legislation that aligns with the district's ledge platform and fosters positive relationships with city, county, state, and federal legislators. And 1.4.7, participate in AQUA, CASA, CSDA, and other industry committees to help shape industry trends and bring back best practices to our organization. That AI policy that we just talked about is one of those. Next slide, or you can stay there, I'm sorry. Go ahead, next slide. A copy of the affiliation list is also in your packet, and you'll see I've added something onto this the affiliation list where I have identified where those different 1.4.2, 1.4.3, where those different measures tie back in with the affiliation list. I've listed them there with my own opinions. You guys may have a little bit differing opinion, but I wanted to start the conversation there. Like in this first area, the BIA, DVBA, CVCAN, all of those fall under, the CVEP, PS Unified, and all the AQUA and CSDA stuff, that falls under 1.4.7, whereas CVEP, PS Unified, and the Greater Coachella Valley Chamber is 1.4.2. So you can see there's a little bit of a differentiation in those first ones, but that gives you a pretty good guide. Go ahead, Will, to the next one, please. This is the area where the BIA, DVBA, CVCAN, all of those fall under 1.4.3, the industry professionals, while all the legislative meetings fall under either 1.4.6, 1.4.7, and 1.4.2. I know that's a mouthful, but once you start really looking at it and delving into it, it becomes pretty clear how we align. Go ahead, Will, next slide. And then also on the voting delegations, I went ahead and put those on there as well. With that, there's a copy of this sheet in your packet if you go to the next page, and you guys can look at that, discuss it. And then this was really a board-driven discussion, so I just wanted to start that communication lines and then open it up to the board.
Okay. Great. I know it was mentioned as well as just how do these different assignments bring back value to our district? And that's really um, I think shown here that it aligns with our strategic plan, but it is the onus is on the person participating to bring back a quality report that we give out each month in our director's report. And so, I mean, we saw it today with the AI from CASA last week, and the previous Aqua had a lot of talk about the um, administrative exhaustion, that bill 2254, whatever it was. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we're kind of made aware of, and we come back and hopefully report that to staff and report that to each other to hopefully be on top of things. So I'm open for discussion. Anyone like to discuss how this aligns with strategic plan?
I'd like to hear from Director Duff first. He's, I believe, the one that had this put on.
Thank you for getting that strategic plan in front of us. I wanted to have a moment for us to take a step back and look at everything that we had for a long time been members of and make sure that it was matching up with our goals. And my initial discussion was about our local events. And there are a lot of local things that are not on this list. And it's because our board isn't compensated for attending. And I just want to bring attention to the fact that a big part of our responsibility is to show up for our community. And so I had wanted to discuss this to make sure that we were all addressing what will be required to help us all show up more in our community. Show up at the library talks, show up at various community talks when the staff is having them, and making that an equal priority, even though we are not paid to show, because this is our community. And I wanted to have a discussion about that. I also wanted to make sure that it was aligning properly, which you were able to do wonderfully. So thank you very much. And if anyone had any conversations or things that they felt we should remove, I would love to talk about that.
Yes, go ahead, Vice President Griffin. No, I'd like to hear what you have to say first.
No, I like the way you did this, to show it demonstrates the value and how it does tie back. There are a lot of events that we don't get paid for, and obviously we cannot go to all of them. But it is nice, especially the ones in the community, if we could show up. I used to go to the library meetings and then my schedule changed, and so I don't get off work until after they're done. But I think it's important that we actually show that we are out there and are part of the community. And I think it actually enhances our not just our reputation, but just shows that we're actually in this, because this is a public service position, and it shows that we are out there for the public. And so I'm happy to join on those events where I can. And I would encourage everybody to, at least if there's one item a month that we're not paid for, but you can attend, at least show up and show your support. If not for yourself, then for the staff who actually put a lot of time and effort into them. So, and I see mostly everybody here does. I just want to say it is really important.
I agree, Vice President Griffith, that we should get out there. That's why Director Martin here and I, we were at the grand opening for the housing track that just came, Skyborn. So we were there for that. I've been attending some other grand openings. None of it's compensated. And I think it's important that we do get out there. Our affiliation list, would you go back one slide, please? Building Industry Association, only when it's held in the Coachella Valley. I'm the primary for that. It brings back no value that I've found for MSWD. They meet 3 times. Once was to go last year, once was to go for a ride up to the tram. I didn't go to it. I believe Martin went to that one. Then it was LG Steakhouse. We didn't eat steak there. We just had some hors d'oeuvres and that. I talked to some folks that were interested in doing some bidding and referred them to General Manager Mason. And the last one I was sick, but it was just to go to a business to look at. Apparently there was an $800,000 kitchen set up there, but it brought back no value to us. So we probably, if we're gonna look at our affiliation list here, we probably should take that one off.
Which one's that?
Building Industry Association.
Can I make a comment on that? When we're talking about it?
Sure,
Let you
sure. Go ahead.
No,
As long as get
I
the-
can only think of, I can't think of too many organizations, the BIA and Denver Valley Builders Association. I can't think of an organization that deals more with water and wastewater infrastructure than those two organizations. I mean, the building industry is very, they're the ones that are putting in water access to each of the homes. They're the ones that are installing the sewer lines and things like that. To the access to the roadway building. So they're very much involved in those issues that we are concerned with, water and wastewater. I'm also concerned about only when held in the Coachella Valley. I don't like that restriction because some of the things that are held outside the Coachella Valley are directly related to what we're involved in. So I would like to see that taken off on both of those things. And again, the building industry deals with water and wastewater all the time. And everything. And not only that, but it's not always just, it's the relationships you build with people within those organizations that has equal importance. I really think it's important for us to establish relationships with those members of the building industry on those two organizations. Because it'll either directly or indirectly impact our services.
I agree with most of what you have to say there. I'm not sure if the information we're bringing back from those two organizations are all that valuable, but
Sometimes it is.
just sometimes it isn't, and sometimes it could be. As far as the BIA goes, they had a water conference in Ontario. I wasn't able to attend it because it wasn't in the Coachella Valley. And that was changed last year when this came up. The hoteliers, they know where we're located. I was the alternate for that. And I wasn't asked to go to cover for the primary on that. Somebody else was. I think that was just. Mhm.
There's been no hoteliers meeting.
Not for a while, about 6 months ago. I think Director Duff reported on it. So if there's no hoteliers meetings, so if there's no hoteliers.
There's been 3 hoteliers meetings last year.
Okay.
Vice President Griffith, please use your mic.
There's been 3 hoteliers meetings last year. I did not put them down for compensation or anything, and I did not report on them. And the reason is that they had absolutely nothing to do with the agency.
Well, there we go. So why are we still supporting that, spending our ratepayers' money to support them? We have to join them, or?
What ratepayers' money are we paying?
That's what I'm asking you. Are we paying to join the hoteliers?
Hoteliers is a voluntary organization, and no,
So we support them, but we don't pay to
we
support them.
support them, yes,
That's-
so that if there's any.
I'm all for that, so.
Okay. But when I do
Okay.
those, I don't claim compensation. I go for my other job. So,
Okay,
Um,
well, that's fine.
but yeah, nobody has.
I mean, you guys wanted to bring this up, so here we are.
But
If
to
you guys wanna
clarify
take
your
it off,
but-
I don't have a problem.
But to clarify, I've never attended any of the hoteliers meetings, not on behalf of Director Griffith or anyone else. The only thing I've attended on his behalf as his substitute was DWA. So I'm confused as to what you're
Well,
reporting.
maybe it was DWA, then I got it mixed up.
But if you guys want to take that off, I don't have.
No, if it's not costing us anything,
No.
we can go ahead and still support stuff that's not costing anything.
No, but
I don't have a problem with that.
No, it's not.
And I don't have a problem with you being managing a hotel and representing us with the hoteliers.
Yeah, no.
I don't have a problem with that
if
either.
there was some, even something that was
Yes, sir.
discussed related
Yes.
to us, I would certainly bring that back, but
Yeah,
it's
sure.
on there, it's always been on there, but.
Okay. It's on our affiliation list. I thought our affiliation list, we were members and paying. I know we pay the
No,
BIA and some of these others.
No, we don't pay it all.
Okay, and
I
then
would take it off.
what about the cannabis people? I've been to most of their meetings. And I'm not sure why we're supporting those folks. They have all the money they need. They don't really need our support other than to say, yeah, we're gonna hook you up with water. We'll hook you up with, and work with you however we can. Is it really important that we go to those meetings to listen to two nurses talk about medical marijuana? Or I have never really been, I've been to a number of those meetings. And I don't really see the value of coming back here to the district with that. I know that Director Duff is, when there's a problem, they call Director Duff, and it just, and here again, the planning commission meeting, they're counseling it all the time. They're right, yeah, they are. Yeah, they streamlined the process over there, so now the staff is taking care of most of it. Yeah, but it's being counseled.
Not aware of it.
Yeah, last month, I think, last month was canceled. And I'm waiting to see if this month's gonna happen. And then again, sorry, the city council meetings. We live here. There again, what are we doing here with all this? You guys brought it up. So let's go through it and look at it. And here, when we look down this whole list, I only see my name up there twice. And both of those meetings, they're either counseling or they don't come to town. So whatever you guys have got going on here with all this leaves me out in the cold. I don't have anything more to say.
Did you have any comments, Director Wynn?
Yeah, well, like I said, my only problem I have with the affiliation list is I do not like only when held in Coachella, because there's a lot of valuable conferences and things of that nature, or meetings that deal specifically with the Coachella Valley, but it might be held in Ontario. So I just really don't like that restriction.
I think that you could bring them to the board for separate approval. Like, I'm sad that you didn't get to go to the BIA water conference. I didn't know it existed, and I would have voted your approval to attend a water conference. But to vote to approve a wine tasting at a winery, or a dance, or a dinner, or drink somewhere, or a bowling night or something like that, I don't agree with paying mileage for our directors and paying a stipend for our directors to go to those types of events. And I include C Buchanan in that. In looking at their schedule, I have an email out to their director, their president, asking them when the board meetings will be scheduled, because that's the only thing I need to attend.
But the issue that you state is a valid one for cocktails or whatever, but that doesn't necessarily, that happens in the Coachella Valley too. And so they're making that restriction.
Well, I would actually go that far and say I would like us to not go to any more of the receptions and the chit chat meetings. Only if there's a board meeting of business, I'm okay. But I'm not saying that. I just said I would.
One of the things that we can't lose sight of is the value of building relationships with this
Agreed.
organization. Not necessarily the topic that's discussed, but reaching out because you need those people at some future date to support on water restricted issues. It's like I say, it's building a relationship, and I think that's equally important. So
And I think we all have to be cognizant of that, right?
So are you saying then that paying $1,000 for a table of 10 to go to the airport this month shouldn't be happening? I didn't sign up for it. Well, yes or no, yeah, maybe not, you don't know.
Attended it, so I don't know. I
So-
can't speak unless I had personal experience as to what was gained from it.
Well, you could read the description of what's taking place there, but anyways, and I agree with what Director Martin says. Yeah, we need to build relationships. And where are we building these relationships at? And how is it benefiting our customers? I'm at a loss here with the whole, with some of this. There again, if you're not going to support the Building Industry Association, and either myself or when the time comes, Director Martin can't leave town to do it. And then we have to come back here every time that there is something that may be out of town and get it approved by the board. Then the board should start looking at everything that we are attending and approving it before we go. It's like saying that we just left a conference in Palm Springs. What is going to change between now and the next conference in Washington? But, and when you get back, it's going to change again. So I don't know. You guys do whatever. All I know is that my name ain't up here.
I can support the assigned meetings and stuff on there, but only if the restriction on only held in the Coachella Valley is removed. I think that's improper.
I disagree. I don't think it's improper. I kind of agree with Director Duff. I think there's some things that are out of town, and what we're doing is asking ratepayers for us to pay mileage, overnight, all that stuff, as well as a stipend. I think on a case-by-case basis, a water conference, fine, but again, a wine tasting in Temecula, you can meet those same people at something that is closer, and then it is not costing us several $100s for someone to go to enjoy wine tastings. I think if it's outside of the valley and if it's something that is relevant, really relevant to us, okay, but those same networking opportunities, DVBA, they have something every single month. So those networking opportunities are there. It's not that they're not available close by. It's just once in a while they have something. And if there's something that is relevant, a water conference in Ontario, hey, bring it to us. We did this with was it CWA back in San Diego a year or 2 years ago was, hey, we're going to get this award. Bring it to the board. We're going to pay and we're going to do the overnight. We did it. But on a regular basis, we don't do that with those guys.
So cancel the trip to Washington, DC?
There we go.
So, okay, so you guys want to bring that up? I'll cancel my trip, all right?
I
So
don't
you-
want to bring it up.
No, but I'm just saying, there's a big difference between going to a wine tasting in Temecula and going and meeting with Congress to try and get some grant money for us.
What wine
Big
tasting,
difference.
what wine tasting thing? The last time there was a wine tasting thing at Temecula,
There was a
General-
DVA wine
yeah,
tasting thing.
General Manager Macy, myself, and Director Martin were there, and that's when there was a problem with another director. It was all about, we didn't taste any wine. Maybe that's what they called it, but nobody was drinking wine. We were there talking about the future of how we're going to house employees, how we're going to get people interested in the water industry. We weren't there drinking wine, so I don't know where you guys come up with that. You weren't there.
What are you talking about? What is it that you went to?
We down to Temecula to the winery.
For who? What organization?
I think it was a
Aqua.
nine meeting.
Yeah, it was, that's correct.
That's Aqua.
Okay, so nobody was drinking wine. I don't think anybody of us want to drink a bunch of wine in Temecula and drive home on the freeway. Yes.
You can do all the legislative representation. I resign. You
No,
can-
Robert, that's not fair. That's just,
No,
that's just,
I'm
no. I don't want you to resign from anything. We can do it a little bit more fair. You don't have to.
no, I'm just.
Act like that.
I'm not sure, but I'm just saying, since there's questions about what's the point, then
I didn't-
I'm happy to, because you know what? I have a job that takes me away constantly, so that's kind of the point that I'm at. It's,
I'm at the point you guys brought this up. You opened up a can of worms. This is what happened. And I don't want you to resign from everything. Some of these things, I think you're very capable and very qualified to be on. So please don't get that kind of attitude.
okay.
We need to work together. That's all.
I have a question. What was uh, travel outside the Coachella Valley for a BIA event or Desert Valley Builders Association outside? Was there a complaint about that, or what prompted that being added to this?
That was added last year, not this January, but January 2024. And that was to try to, at that time, we were talking about taking BIA off completely. And instead we made the concession that we would just make it in the Coachella Valley. That's where that conversation stems from.
All the Desert Valley Builders Association.
No, I don't believe, no, I think both of them were included then.
I remember what the problem was now. EIA held an event at a brewery. And I went down to that event at the brewery. And I met some very influential people, the people in the BIA here, Building Industry Association. There's some very powerful people there. And they were very nice, and that's basically what took place. I ate and met those folks and came back, but I wasn't there drinking and carrying on. So that, I think you got the,
No,
No,
I think
there
it
was
was
a-
more when we raised our stipend was, so we have to look at how do we make sure that we are kind of targeting what is really, really relevant. And some of the stuff outside of the valley was not as relevant on some of those things. And that was a decision that we all came to at that time. And we voted on that.
I don't recall that restriction being voted on by those. Yeah,
Consensus.
like I said, I didn't say it didn't happen. I'm saying.
No, I'm just-
all doing
I,
It was last year,
old age.
yeah,
but I'm just gonna put out, I hope,
therein lies my future, which is scary.
I don't want this to cause conflict amongst each other. I think we're all gonna disagree on which one. You're gonna try and say this one's more valuable than that one. That's gonna be a very difficult conversation. I think there's value in all of them, and I think Marion's proved the value in all of them by referring them to our plan. I'm up for discussion. Again, I'm sorry you didn't attend that water conference, but I'm pretty sure there was at least a 30, 60, 90-day notice before that happened that we could have voted on it. I know when we did up our compensation, a lot of these things last year, we had a pretty good discussion. And from what I remember, we were all on board, at least we voted on it. And then I believe it was November and then December, both meetings, I put calls out. Well, no, it's December, 2 different meetings in December. I put calls out. Let me know if you have changes you'd like to see to the affiliation list. Share your opinion with me. Hopefully, come January, I make a decision of what it's going to be that we're going to vote on, and everyone has consensus. I only received opinions from 2 people. So it's difficult to look at it after the fact and say, well, I don't have this or I don't have that when I'm not even given your opinion. And then I feel like you want to say you don't have a no. That's difficult for me to then,
you're the one dividing the meetings up. You're the one that's in charge.
right?
I think I said during one meeting, I have nothing to say about it. And right now,
But you have
I'm not even going to say anything more because it doesn't really, there's nothing up, not even up here, so it doesn't affect me. So please carry on with whatever you guys want to do. You would think by now somebody would understand that I actually went to college for what we're doing here. I actually have some experience with government. And
And that's why you
nobody's
have your
recognized it.
planning commission.
The planning commission hardly ever meets. I'm on there
And the
twice.
building industry ties into planning, which you have experience with. I didn't make these
So-
decisions out of thin air.
I-
And I asked for opinions prior to this. So I'm just gonna say, I think
This is the
that
third
this,
time that it's happened. I don't care anymore. Just do whatever you want. It doesn't affect me. None of this, whatever we're talking about here, no longer affects me. Because the Building Industry Association shows up here 3 times. The Planning Commission is being counseled most of the time. So the rest of it, my name's not on it. It doesn't affect me. So I'm not going to say anything more.
do we have any other comments on the affiliation list? Do we have any suggestions to revisit this, to make changes at this month's meeting? With that, we'll move on to item 11, committee schedule.
Thank you. Last month, I believe it was last month, we had some discussion, going to the next slide, talking about the committee meetings and trying to make sure that we were meeting regularly with those committees. And there was a suggestion that we make sure that they meet at least once or twice a year. So this is the committees that were approved last year or last month during our January meeting: the Executive Committee, the Engineering Committee, the Finance Committee, the Human Relations Committee, and the Public Affairs Committee. Next slide. Of those committees, the one that meets most regularly is the Public Affairs. Whenever we have any type of dispute with customers, the Public Affairs Committee gets called up. Plus, we also have our Human Relations meeting, at least once a year, gets pulled up when we talk about the employee asks. So what General Manager Macy and I did was we looked at the next several months, trying to plan out where we could have each of the committees meet. And I wanted to give you guys some ideas of some of the potential topics we'd be discussing at those meetings. And then if you look in the packet of paper, the last 2 pages, you can see my conference and event schedule, so we could look at possible dates. And so what I would ask is that within your subcommittees, if you're a chairperson, you could work with your other person on your committee to look at some potential dates in your month, and then get back to staff so that we can actually organize those. Those meetings are actually calendared, and they're subject to an agenda, Brown Act, all of that. So it is something that we have to put on the calendar, and we have to do some planning and some preparation around. So if we could get those dates in the next couple of weeks, that'd be really appreciated.
And other dates to take in consideration, we do have some future conflicts. The Aqua Conference will impact our May 15th study session, and then the CASA will also impact our August 14th study session. So when we're talking about getting together in May with the finance to talk about the long-range financial plan, we're already going to have to move around the study session on the 15th. So just also bringing that to light as well.
Do we want to discuss dates today, or do you want this as homework and we will discuss at the study session?
I would love it if we could bring it back after you guys have a chance to review the dates.
All right. Anything further on committee schedule? Comments on committees?
The question I have, and like I say, they don't meet that often, so my memory's a little short on that. But you have the name that appears first and then a second board member. Is that primary and alternate, or is that both?
Primary.
You're both.
They're both.
Well, if you go back one slide, it shows that. There you go. It's right there.
And that's in the packet.
I got it. Something more. Okay.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
I think this is great. I think having the committees meet at least annually is good for the committee and good for our district. Thank you. Item 12, general manager's comments.
No comments today.
Item 13, director comments, general comments, future agenda items, and future meeting requests. Director Martin?
This comment I have is a lot of good information provided today, and glad to see us getting into the meat and potatoes of the water district, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Director Marioff?
I think it was a good, productive meeting, even though there were some disagreements. We're still all smiling at each other, and that's what counts.
Would you take the knife out of my back?
No.
No, shut it.
Director Dust?
Looks good there.
Thank you for this workshop. There was a lot of very important information. Also, on number 9 regarding policy changes as far as topics, can we add working with IT to correct or update the policy in regards to the technology given board members? Thank you.
Yes.
Vice President?
Ted and I have a history of disagreeing sometimes. So that can I still enjoy his company. And maybe because we did serve time on planning commission together.
Yeah, that's correct.
But I know that sometimes you don't feel that people listen to you or value you, and I want you to let you know, at least in my case, because I really do appreciate your input. Even though you and I don't agree, I appreciate the fact that you actually think and throw some stuff out there. And every once in a while, you actually have a good idea.
I appreciate that, and I'm glad we're still able to get along, even though we don't always agree.
And I'll echo some of Director Griffith's comments. I want us to still always have discussions, even if it is uncomfortable. And I appreciate everyone's opinions and ideas. The affiliates list, I think, is a agree to disagree, but that's something that's supplemental to our main role. And I know you mentioned that you don't feel you're valued, but our main role is our 3 or 4, sometimes 5 meetings a month that we have here at the Diet, of workshops and study sessions and board meetings. And that's really our time that we've been elected or appointed or however we got up here onto this board, of what's really important. Everything else is supplementing the decisions that we make up here. So again, thank you for all your comments and the work we do together. And I look forward to our next meeting. Thank you. Is that everything? With that, the meeting is adjourned.